I never expected to find an antique chest on my doorstep at 7 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning. But there it sat, a weathered mahogany box with brass fixtures, looking like something out of a period drama. The morning frost had already settled on its intricate metalwork, suggesting it had been there for hours. Next to it was a cream-colored envelope with my name, Olivia, written in my mother-in-law Margaret's unmistakable cursive. My hands trembled as I picked up the envelope, already dreading its contents. In the 3 years I'd been married to her son Daniel, Margaret had never given me anything without an ulterior motive. Last Christmas, she gifted me a fertility tracker with a note about continuing the family line. For my birthday, it was a book about proper family traditions, complete with highlighted passages about respecting one's elders. The note inside was brief. This chest contains the truth about your husband's past. Open it before everyone arrives for dinner. You deserve to know what kind of man you married. Margaret. I dragged the surprisingly heavy chest inside, my mind racing. Daniel was still asleep upstairs, exhausted from his late shift at the hospital. As an emergency room doctor, he often worked unusual hours, but he'd made sure to get Thanksgiving off so we could host his family for the first time. The chest's lock was old but sturdy, with no key in sight. Obviously, Margaret wanted me to work for whatever revelation she had planned. I ran my fingers over the intricate carvings on the lid, roses and thorns intertwined in an endless pattern. Despite myself, I had to admire its craftsmanship. Morning, beautiful. Daniel's voice startled me. He stood in the doorway, hair tousled from sleep, looking confused at the scene before him. What's that? I hesitated, then handed him the note. His face darkened as he read it, jaw tightening in that way I'd come to recognize whenever his mother was involved. She never stops, does she? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Whatever's in there, we can just ignore it. Give it back to her at dinner. But something in his voice caught my attention. A slight tremor, barely noticeable if you hadn't spent 3 years learning every nuance of someone's speech. You know what's in it, don't you? Liv, he wouldn't meet my eyes, which was answer enough. Daniel, what aren't you telling me? He sat heavily on our couch, suddenly looking much older than his 32 years. There are things about my past, before we met. Things I should have told you, but I was afraid. My heart pounded. Afraid of what? Afraid you'd look at me differently, that you wouldn't understand. He stood up abruptly. I need to start prepping the turkey. We can deal with this another time. I caught his arm. No, your mother left this here for a reason, and for once I think she might be right. I deserve to know. Fine, he snapped, pulling away. Then open it. But whatever you find in there, remember that I'm still the same person you married. He stormed upstairs, leaving me alone with the chest and my growing anxiety. The next 2 hours were a blur of failed attempts to open the lock. I tried every key in the house, watched YouTube videos about lock picking, and even considered calling a locksmith, all while trying to prepare for the 12 people coming to dinner. Around 10, my best friend Kate arrived early to help cook, taking one look at my frazzled state and immediately demanding answers. I showed her the chest and note. That manipulative witch, Kate muttered, examining the lock. You know, this is just another one of her games, right? Remember the family photos she brought last Easter? I did remember. Margaret had arrived with an album full of pictures from Daniel's childhood, almost all featuring his ex-girlfriend from medical school. It had taken weeks for those images to stop haunting me. But what if she's right this time? I whispered, voicing my deepest fear. Daniel's acting strange. He knows what's in here, Kate, and it scares him. Kate set down the chest and gripped my shoulders. Listen to me. That man adores you. Whatever skeletons are in this fancy box, they can't change that. Before I could respond, my phone chimed with a text from Margaret. I assume you found my delivery. The key will be with me at dinner. Come early if you want it. She's playing with you, Kate warned, reading over my shoulder. Maybe, I agreed, but I'm tired of her games. I grabbed my car keys. Can you watch the turkey? I'll be back in 30 minutes. The drive to Margaret's house was familiar. We'd made it countless times for Sunday dinners and holiday celebrations. But today, every mile felt charged with purpose. Her perfectly maintained Victorian home came into view, its pristine white paint and immaculate garden hiding years of casual cruelty and calculated manipulation. Margaret opened the door before I could knock, a smile playing at her lips. I had a feeling you'd come. She led me into her formal living room, where the key lay on a velvet cushion like some sort of prize. "Before I give you this," she said, picking it up, "ask yourself if you're ready for what it reveals. Some truths can't be unknown once they're learned." "What I'm ready for," I said through gritted teeth, "is for you to stop playing these mind games. Either give me the key, or I'm leaving, and taking the chest to a locksmith." Something flickered in her eyes, respect, maybe, or surprise at my backbone. Without another word, she handed me the key. It was small and golden, with the same rose pattern as the chest. "When you open it," she called as I headed for the door, "remember that I tried to warn you about him from the beginning." I was halfway to my car when my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Where are you? Please don't open that chest. Come home. We need to talk." But it was too late. I'd spent 3 years letting Margaret's insinuations and Daniel's evasions shape our marriage. Whatever truth lay in that chest, I needed to face it head on. I pulled into our driveway, the key burning a hole in my pocket. Kate met me at the door, her expression worried. "Daniel's been pacing upstairs since you left. What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath, clutching the key. "I'm going to open that chest, and whatever I find inside, well, I guess we'll all have something to discuss at Thanksgiving dinner." The old lock turned with surprising ease, as if it had been waiting for this moment. As I lifted the heavy lid, I heard Daniel's footsteps on the stairs behind me. But my attention was fixed on the contents of the chest, and the secrets they revealed about the man I thought I knew completely. Inside the chest lay a collection of newspaper clippings, yellowed with age but carefully preserved in plastic sleeves. The headlines jumped out at me. "Local teen hero saves family from fire." "Mystery Good Samaritan identified," and "Daniel Preston, the boy who risked everything." Each article featured photos of a younger Daniel, his face smudged with soot but eyes bright with determination. Beneath the clippings was a singed firefighter's badge, its metal surface scratched and tarnished. A folded letter accompanied it, the paper crisp despite its age, addressed to Daniel Preston Sr. "Live, wait." Daniel's voice cracked behind me, but I was already unfolding the letter. "Dear Dad," it began. "By the time you read this, I'll have already accepted the firefighter position in Boston. I know you and Mom wanted me to follow in your footsteps and become a doctor, but I can't ignore my calling. The work I've done as a volunteer firefighter these past 2 years has shown me who I really am." I looked up at Daniel, who stood frozen on the stairs. "You were a firefighter?" He nodded slowly, coming to sit beside me. "For 3 years, right after high school. It was all I ever wanted to be." "But what happened? Why did you become a doctor instead?" His hands shook as he picked up the badge. "There was a call, an apartment complex. We got everyone out, except—" He closed his eyes, the memory clearly painful. "There was a little girl, maybe 6 years old. I found her hiding under her bed, got her almost to safety, but the floor collapsed. I managed to throw her to my partner, but I fell 3 stories." Kate, who had been quietly watching, gasped. Daniel continued, his voice distant. "Broke both legs, fractured my spine. The doctors said I'd never work as a firefighter again. My parents, they saw it as a sign, said God was telling me to follow their plan instead of my own." "So you became a doctor," I whispered, pieces falling into place. "I fought it at first, was angry, depressed. But eventually, I realized that even if I couldn't run into burning buildings, I could still save lives. Just in a different way." I shuffled through more papers in the chest, finding medical records, physical therapy notes, and finally, a small wooden box. Inside was a Medal of Valor, awarded for that final rescue. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Daniel's laugh was bitter. "My mother made it clear that part of my life was better forgotten. Said no respectable doctor's wife would want to be married to a former firefighter, that it would hurt my reputation, our social standing." "That's ridiculous," Kate interjected. "You're a hero." "But wait," I said, something not adding up. "Your mother left this chest. Why would she want me to know this now?" Daniel's expression darkened. "Because she found out about the trust fund." "What trust fund?" "The fire department has a fund for injured firefighters. I never touched it, didn't need to with my parents paying for medical school. But last month, I transferred it all to a children's burn unit. Mom was furious when she found out, said I was throwing away my inheritance." The doorbell rang, making us all jump. Through the window, I could see Margaret and her husband Richard climbing our front steps, arriving early as usual. "I'll get it," Kate offered, but I stood up. "No, I need to handle this." Margaret swept in like she owned the place, her eyes immediately finding the open chest. "Ah, so now you know. About your husband's unfortunate past." "Unfortunate?" My voice was quiet but steady. "You mean his heroism, his sacrifice, the lives he saved?" She waved a dismissive hand. "He was throwing his life away, playing at being a working-class hero. We gave him a better path." "No," Daniel said, standing beside me. "You took advantage of my injury to force your path on me, and now you're trying to use it to drive a wedge between me and Olivia." "I'm trying to protect this family's reputation," Margaret snapped. "Bad enough you gave away your compensation money, but now you're volunteering at that burn unit, associating with—" "With what?" I interrupted. "With brave men and women who risk their lives for others, with children who need help and hope." I picked up the Medal of Valor, holding it out. "You should be proud of this. Instead, you're ashamed because it doesn't fit your narrow view of success." Richard, who had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke up. "She's right, Margaret. What we did, what we forced him to do, it wasn't right." Margaret's face flushed. "How dare you?" "No," Richard cut her off. "I've watched you manipulate our son, his wife, this entire family for years. I said nothing when you pushed Daniel into medicine, said nothing when you tried to control his marriage, but I'm done being silent." The doorbell rang again. More guests arriving. Kate slipped away to let them in, leaving us in our tableau of confrontation. Margaret's carefully maintained facade cracked slightly. "Everything I did was for this family." "No," Daniel said softly. "Everything you did was for your image of this family, but that image was never real, Mom, and I'm done pretending it was." More relatives were filtering in, drawn by the tension in the air. Daniel picked up the chest, lifting it onto our dining room table. "Since everyone's here," he announced, "I'd like to share something. A story about who I was before I became a doctor. A story my mother hoped you'd never know." The Thanksgiving table fell silent as Daniel shared his story. I watched as our family members' expressions shifted from confusion to amazement as he pulled out each piece of evidence from the chest. His cousin Emma, a nurse, wiped tears away when he described saving the little girl. His Uncle Thomas, usually so proper and reserved, reached for the Medal of Valor with trembling hands. "I remember that fire," Thomas said quietly. "It was all over the news, but I never knew. Margaret told us you were away at a pre-med program." Margaret sat rigid in her chair, her turkey untouched, as her carefully constructed narrative crumbled around her. Her face grew paler with each supportive comment from the family, each proud look directed at her son. "The burn unit where I volunteer," Daniel continued, his voice stronger now. "There's a teenage girl there. She reminds me so much of the one I saved that day. Last week, she asked me why I became a doctor instead of staying a firefighter." He paused, looking directly at his mother. "I told her the truth, that sometimes life takes unexpected turns and we have to adapt. But I also told her something I should have admitted to myself years ago, that being forced onto a different path doesn't mean we have to forget who we really are." "Daniel," Margaret's voice quivered, "I only wanted. I know what you wanted, Mom. You wanted the perfect doctor's son, the perfect doctor's wife, the perfect family to show off at country club dinners. But look around this table." Everyone turned to survey our mismatched family gathering. Emma with her tattoos peeking out from her nurse's sleeves. Uncle Thomas who'd married his husband last spring despite Margaret's disapproval. Cousin Peter who'd chosen to be a high school teacher instead of joining the family law firm. "This is real family," I said, standing beside my husband. "Imperfect, unexpected, but authentic. And Daniel's past as a firefighter, it doesn't shame this family, it honors it." Kate, who had been quietly supporting from the sidelines, suddenly spoke up. "Actually, I have something to add." She pulled out her phone, showing a video on the screen. "Last week, I was at the burn unit doing a story for the local news. I caught this." The video showed Daniel sitting with a young girl, her face partially scarred. They were laughing together as he taught her to fold origami cranes, telling her about the Japanese legend that folding 1,000 cranes grants a wish. "Your wish shouldn't be to erase your scars," Daniel's voice came through clearly in the video. "They're proof of your strength, your survival. Wish instead for the courage to show the world who you really are." Margaret made a small choked sound. For the first time since I'd known her, I saw her perfect mask crack completely. Tears rolled down her cheeks, smearing her immaculate makeup. I was so afraid, she whispered. When you fell through that floor, the doctor said you might never walk again. I couldn't bear to see you risk your life like that. I thought I was protecting you. By hiding who I am. By trying to control every aspect of my life. And now my marriage. Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. Mom, I'm proud of being a doctor. I love my work. But I'm also proud of being a firefighter. Both parts of my life make me who I am. Richard reached for his wife's hand. Margaret, remember how we met? When I was just a resident, living in that tiny apartment, and you chose me over the businessman your parents wanted you to marry. She nodded slowly, realization dawning in her eyes. Your parents were wrong about me, Richard continued, just like we were wrong about Daniel's choices, and about Olivia. I felt tears in my own eyes as Margaret turned to me. The chest, she said softly. I thought knowing about Daniel's past would make you see him differently, that you'd be ashamed, like I was. Ashamed. I picked up the Medal of Valor, holding it out to her. This is your son's legacy. Not just the medical degree on his wall or the position at the hospital. All of it, and I love every part of him, firefighter, doctor, and everything in between. Margaret stood shakily, walking around the table to where we stood. She took the medal in her hands, really looking at it for the first time. Then, to everyone's surprise, she hugged Daniel tightly. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. The tension in the room dissolved into tears, laughter, and the sharing of long-buried stories. As we finally settled in to eat our now cold turkey, I watched my mother-in-law carefully place the Medal of Valor on our mantelpiece, right next to Daniel's medical school graduation photo. Later that night, after the dishes were cleared and the family had gone home, Daniel and I sat on our porch swing, his arm around me as we watched the stars. Thank you, he said softly, for loving all of me. I snuggled closer. Always. But you know what this means, right? What? Next Thanksgiving, you're teaching everyone how to fold origami cranes. He laughed, the sound free and unburdened for the first time in years. Above us, the stars twinkled like tiny flames, each one a reminder that sometimes the brightest light comes from the truth we're most afraid to share.